The courtroom benches creaked beneath shifting bodies as I watched my family file toward the exit, not lingering for me, but fleeing to something they deemed more important. Maya's talent show finale started in an hour, and apparently that trumped my swearing-in ceremony as the youngest prosecutor in state history. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows across empty seats where my parents should have been sitting, where they'd promised to be sitting when I'd called them 3 weeks ago with the news. "Sarah Chen, please step forward." The bailiff's voice echoed in the nearly vacant courtroom, bouncing off wood-paneled walls that had witnessed 1,000 oaths, 1,000 promises to serve justice. I rose on trembling legs, smoothing my charcoal suit, the same one I'd worn to my funeral in my previous life. The fabric smelled faintly of dry cleaning chemicals and determination. 27 years old again, with all the memories of 34 etched into my consciousness like scars on my soul. My phone buzzed against my hip as I approached the bench. Text messages I didn't need to read to know their contents. "Sorry, honey, Maya's so nervous." From Mom. "We'll celebrate tomorrow, promise." From Dad. "Break a leg at the thing." From my sister, who couldn't even remember what my thing was. The same excuses, delivered with the same casual cruelty that had defined my first life. But this time I smiled. The manila envelope in my briefcase contained more than just my law degree and bar certification. 3 years of meticulous planning had led to this moment. 3 years since I'd gasped back to life in my childhood bedroom, 16 again, and burning with the knowledge of how this story ended the first time. Judge Morrison's weathered face creased into a proud smile as she gestured for me to raise my right hand. "Do you solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution?" The words washed over me like absolution. My left hand pressed against the leather-bound Bible, fingers finding the thin scar on my palm. A reminder of the night I'd died alone in a hospital bed while they celebrated Maya's community theater debut 3 blocks away. This time would be different. The USB drive in my pocket felt heavier than its actual weight, loaded with evidence that would soon make tonight's betrayal their final act of casual cruelty. Bank records, recorded conversations, photographs of documents I'd been gathering since the day I'd realized my rebirth was real and my family's nature was unchangeable. "So help you God?" "I do." The words tasted like iron and victory on my tongue. Polite applause rippled through the gallery, mostly other new prosecutors and their families, a few court staff who'd stayed late to witness the ceremony. The sound felt hollow in the cavernous room, emphasizing the conspicuous absence of the people who should have cared most. Judge Morrison stepped down from the bench to shake my hand, her grip firm and warm. She'd been my mentor through law school, one of the few people who'd seen potential in the quiet girl who studied obsessively and never spoke of her family. "Your parents must be so proud," she said, glancing meaningfully at the empty front row. "Not everyone gets sworn in at 27 with such distinction." I nodded, swallowing the salt taste of unshed tears mixed with bitter satisfaction. "They're at my sister's talent show," I managed, voice steady despite the storm raging beneath my ribs. "Ah," her expression shifted slightly, a flash of understanding and perhaps pity. "Well, their loss is our gain. You'll do extraordinary things in this office." If only she knew how extraordinary. As the ceremony concluded and people began filing out, I remained standing at the prosecutor's table, running my fingers along its scarred surface. In my first life, I'd never made it this far. The family law firm had consumed me, ground me down until I was nothing but their unpaid associate, handling their grunt work while Maya took credit and Dad praised her natural legal instincts. I'd died at 34, alone and forgotten, my potential buried under years of being second choice. Not this time. My phone buzzed again, a group text from the family. Photos from Maya's performance, her face glowing under stage lights as she belted out defying gravity with decent pitch but no soul. Heart emojis and congratulations filled the thread, while my career milestone went unmentioned. I typed back, "Beautiful, so proud of her," then deleted the thread entirely. The janitor was already wheeling his cart into the courtroom as I gathered my things. The building felt different at night, older, more solemn, heavy with the weight of decisions made and justice served. Outside, the October air bit at my cheeks, carrying the scent of dying leaves and change. The courthouse steps stretched down toward the street where my car waited, a modest Honda that would soon be traded for something more befitting my new status. But first, I had a talent show to attend. Not to support Maya, that ship had sailed and sunk in my previous life. Tonight, I would sit in the back row and watch my family celebrate mediocrity while I planned their destruction with surgical precision. The community center was only 6 blocks away, close enough that they could have attended both events if they'd wanted to, if I'd mattered enough. I started walking, heels clicking against concrete, the USB drive's weight a constant reminder of the power I now held. 3 years of preparation were about to pay dividends they couldn't imagine. The betrayal was complete. The trap was set. Now came the reckoning. The community center's lobby reeked of stale coffee and broken dreams, exactly as it had in my previous life. Red velvet curtains hung like bloodstains against the walls, and the carpet beneath my feet felt sticky with spilled drinks and crushed aspirations. I slipped through the back entrance as Maya's voice soared from the stage, hitting the high notes of defying gravity with technical precision but no soul. The same song, the same performance, the same thunderous applause from an audience desperate to believe they were witnessing greatness. My parents sat in the front row, Dad's phone recording every note while Mom clutched a bouquet of roses. Their faces glowed with pride I'd never seen directed at me, not even when I'd graduated summa cum laude from law school. "Sarah!" Zoe's voice cut through the applause as Maya took her bow. My former best friend materialized beside me, her designer perfume cloying in the recycled air. "You made it! I wasn't sure you'd leave your little ceremony in time." Little ceremony. The casual dismissal hit like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She beamed, missing the edge in my voice entirely. Zoe had always been gifted at hearing only what served her purposes. In my first life, I died thinking she genuinely cared about me. This time, I knew better. "Maya's been so nervous," she continued, adjusting her pearl earrings, a gift from the marketing job she'd landed after feeding my family information about my law school struggles. But I told her she has that special something you just can't teach. The dig was subtle but intentional. Zoe had perfected the art of the backhanded compliment, always positioning herself as Maya's confidant while undermining me with surgical precision. The crowd began dispersing as the show ended, families clustering around their performers with cameras and congratulations. I watched Dad embrace Maya, lifting her off the ground as she laughed, sequins from her dress catching the harsh lobby lights like fallen stars. "There's my little star!" His voice boomed across the space, and I felt the familiar twist in my stomach. The same words he'd used the night I'd won the state debate championship. The night he'd missed because Maya had a cold and needed soup. Mom rushed forward with the roses, her eyes bright with tears. "You were magnificent, sweetheart, just magnificent." They swarmed Maya like moths to flame, their attention complete and consuming. I stood 20 feet away, invisible as always, watching the performance I'd seen 1,000 times in memory and once in flesh. "Sarah!" Dad finally noticed me lurking in the shadows. "You came after all. How did your little legal thing go?" Little legal thing. The phrase scraped against my bones like fingernails on glass. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Congratulations, Maya. You were wonderful." My sister glowed, accepting praise like a plant drinks sunlight. "Thanks. I can't believe how well it went. Zoe said there might be talent scouts here tonight." Zoe nodded enthusiastically, though we all knew the community center's talent show attracted no one more influential than the local newspaper's entertainment blogger. But hope was currency in our family, and Maya spent it freely. "We should celebrate," Mom suggested, already pulling out her phone to make dinner reservations. "Somewhere special for our special girl." Our special girl, never me, always Maya. "Actually," Dad interjected, his tone shifting to business, "we need to talk to Sarah about something important." The family huddle formed naturally, excluding Zoe, who drifted toward the concession stand with a practiced grace. She knew when to give us privacy and when to eavesdrop, a skill that had served her well over the years. "The firm's been struggling," Dad began, his voice low but not quite a whisper. Some cash flow issues, client retention problems. We need fresh blood, new ideas. My heart should have leaped. Finally, the recognition I'd craved, the partnership I'd earned through years of unpaid labor and unacknowledged brilliance. Instead, I felt only cold certainty. Maya's shown real leadership potential, he continued, and there it was. The trap I'd walked into once would never enter again. We think she could bring something special to the practice. That spark you've always lacked. The same words, the exact same crushing, casual cruelty, delivered with the confidence of a man who'd never questioned his own judgment. She doesn't have a law degree, I pointed out, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Details, Dad waved dismissively. She can learn on the job, start with client relations, and work her way up. You can handle the boring legal stuff until she's ready to take over. Take over? My birthright, handed to my unqualified sister like a participation trophy. What do you think, honey? Mom asked Maya, who was still floating on her performance high. I'd love to try something new, Maya said, her voice bright with possibility. Law seems so interesting, and Daddy always says I'm good with people. Good with people. Unlike me, the implication hung heavy and unspoken. The conversation continued around me, plans forming for Maya's integration into the firm, discussions of salary and responsibilities that should have been mine. I nodded at appropriate intervals, made supportive noises, played the role of the accommodating older sister, but inside I was calculating. The recording device in my purse captured every word, every casual dismissal, every revelation of their true priorities. The wire transfer I'd initiated from my phone during Maya's performance was already moving $50,000 from my hidden accounts to a special investigative fund. By morning, a private investigator would begin documenting the firm's questionable billing practices. By next week, the State Bar Association would receive an anonymous tip about financial irregularities. By next month, the walls would start closing in. So we're all in agreement? Dad asked, looking around our little circle. Absolutely, I said, my smile genuine for the first time all evening. Maya will be perfect for the firm. Perfect for its destruction, anyway. As we broke apart to collect coats and say goodbyes, David appeared at my elbow like a bad omen. My former law school crush, the one who'd promised to take me to dinner after my swearing-in ceremony, the one who'd ghosted me after my death in my previous life, unable to handle grief or responsibility. Congratulations on tonight, he said, his smile too wide and his eyes not quite meeting mine. Both of you. Maya practically levitated with joy as David offered his arm, her engagement ring catching the lobby lights. The same ring I'd seen in his glove compartment 3 months ago, when I'd helped him move apartments and he'd sworn he was nowhere near ready for marriage. We have news, Maya announced, her voice carrying across the emptying lobby. David proposed. The announcement hit like a physical blow, even though I'd expected it. The same timeline, the same betrayal, the same casual destruction of trust delivered with champagne and smiles. Mom shrieked with delight. Dad pumped David's hand like he was working a well. Zoe materialized with her phone, snapping photos of the happy couple for social media posterity. And I stood there watching the man who'd sworn he loved me claim my sister as his prize and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Because this time, I knew exactly how it would end. The drive home was a blur of congratulations from Maya and wedding planning chatter. I sat in the back seat, watching streetlights strobe past the window while mentally reviewing my 3-year plan. Phase 1 was complete. Let them reveal their true nature. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow. The USB drive in my pocket felt like a loaded weapon, and for the first time since my rebirth, I felt truly alive. Monday morning arrived with the crisp efficiency of an execution, the autumn air sharp with the promise of change. I sat at our family breakfast table watching bacon grease congeal on untouched plates, while Dad delivered the news I already knew was coming. I've made a decision about the firm, he announced, his coffee mug steaming between weathered hands that had built a legal practice from nothing, only to hand it to the wrong child. Maya will be taking over as partner. The kitchen fell silent except for the refrigerator's persistent hum and the distant sound of traffic beginning the morning commute. Mom paused mid-bite of her toast, butter glistening on her lower lip as she processed the magnitude of Dad's announcement. "But Sarah's the lawyer," she said carefully, glancing between my impassive face and Maya's glowing one. "Doesn't she deserve—" "Sarah's a fine legal mind," Dad interrupted, his tone suggesting this was a conversation he'd already resolved in his own mind. "But Maya has the people skills we need. The charm, the natural leadership. Sarah can handle the research and paperwork." Research and paperwork. The grunt work I'd been doing for free since college, while Maya pursued her various artistic endeavors with the family's financial backing. "I think it's a wonderful opportunity," I said, sipping my orange juice and tasting victory beneath the citrus tang. Maya will bring such fresh perspective to the practice." Maya beamed across the table, her smile radiant with possibility. "I'm so excited. I've already been thinking about ways to modernize our approach. Maybe add some creative elements to client presentations. Creative elements, like the karaoke machine she'd installed in what should have been my office, or the motivational posters about living your truth that now decorated the walls where law degrees should hang. That's innovative," I managed, pulling out my phone to check messages while secretly uploading the morning's conversation to my secure cloud storage. The recording was crystal clear, every dismissive word preserved for posterity. Within an hour, Maya had transformed the office space with the efficiency of someone who'd never doubted their right to occupy it. I helped her hang pictures and arrange furniture, playing the supportive sister while photographing the client files she'd carelessly scattered across the mahogany desk. "This is so much better than that stuffy old setup Dad had," she said, adjusting a poster of a kitten dangling from a tree branch with "Hang in there" emblazoned beneath it. Clients need to feel welcomed, not intimidated. The irony was exquisite. Maya's idea of welcoming professionalism was indistinguishable from a high school guidance counselor's office, complete with a candy dish and motivational quotes about following dreams, but it was the scattered files that made my pulse quicken. Financial records, billing statements, client agreements, all spread across her desk like a buffet of evidence. In my previous life, I'd been too devastated by their betrayal to notice the opportunities their carelessness created. This time, I photographed everything. The late afternoon sun slanted through the office windows as I helped Maya organize her new domain. Each document I handled adding to my growing collection of evidence. Billing irregularities, questionable expense reports, client funds transferred between accounts without proper documentation. Years of sloppy bookkeeping laid bare. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "How's the new partner settling in?" I typed back, "She's amazing, so organized and professional." The lie came easily, muscle memory from years of protecting my family's reputation while they undermined mine. That evening, Zoe called to gloat about her new position as Maya's creative consultant, a job title that existed nowhere in the legal profession but perfectly captured our family's approach to professional standards. "I'm so excited to bring some innovation to the firm," she gushed, her voice bright with opportunity. "Maya has such vision for what legal services could be." I congratulated her warmly while simultaneously uploading the day's photographs to multiple secure servers. The phone felt slippery in my palm, slick with the sweat of barely contained satisfaction. "We're thinking of hosting client appreciation events," Zoe continued. "Maybe wine tastings or art galleries. Something to make the law feel more accessible." Wine tastings. For a profession built on precision and sobriety, nothing could be more inappropriate. But I made encouraging sounds while mentally adding this conversation to my evidence file. By Thursday morning, the State Bar Association's investigation letter arrived with the punctuality of karma. I was sitting in the coffee shop across the street from the firm, ostensibly reviewing case law for my prosecution job while actually watching the drama unfold through the plate glass window. Dad tore open the envelope with steady hands that began trembling as he read. The morning light was harsh and unforgiving, revealing every line of shock and confusion that creased his weathered face. Maya burst through the office door like a hurricane, her designer heels clicking frantically on the sidewalk as she paced in tight circles. Even from across the street, I could see her lips moving rapidly, the gestures of someone trying to solve a problem beyond their comprehension. The espresso machine hissed behind me, masking my quiet laughter as I watched 3 years of planning begin to bear fruit. The investigation would take months to complete, but the damage to their reputation would begin immediately. By lunch, the panic calls started flooding my voicemail. Sarah, honey, we need to talk. There's been some kind of misunderstanding with the bar association. Sarah, it's Dad. Can you call me back? We could really use your legal expertise right about now. Oh God, Sarah, they're saying terrible things about our billing practices. You know how to handle this kind of thing, right? Each message was a small masterpiece of desperation. Voices that had dismissed my expertise for years, suddenly desperate for my help. I listened to them all while walking through the park near the courthouse, fallen leaves crunching beneath my feet like the sound of breaking promises. But I didn't return a single call. That evening, I sat in my apartment's bathtub, warm water washing away the accumulated tension of the day, while my phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages. The lavender bath salts dissolved around me like absolution, carrying away years of hurt and resentment. The investigation would find what I'd carefully led them to find: questionable billing practices, sloppy financial management, a family business that had confused nepotism with competence. The evidence was real, the wrongdoing genuine. I'd simply provided the roadmap for its discovery. Maya would learn what it felt like to be responsible for something beyond her abilities. Dad would understand that business can't run on charm and good intentions. Mom would see the consequences of always choosing the easy favorite over the qualified candidate, and I would continue building my own career far from the wreckage of their poor decisions. The first domino had fallen with the satisfying weight of inevitability. Now I simply had to wait for the others to follow, each one bringing me closer to the justice that had eluded me in my previous life. The water was cooling, but I remained in the tub, planning my next move with the patience of someone who had already seen how this story ended. This time, it would end differently. This time, I would win. 2 weeks later, they tried to manipulate me again with the casual precision of people who'd never questioned their right to my compliance. Maya's engagement party was scheduled for the same evening as my mock trial competition finals, a competition that could launch my career as a prosecutor and cement my reputation in the legal community. The restaurant smelled of garlic and desperation when I arrived, the kind of upscale Italian place that charged $40 for pasta and called it authentic. Red tablecloths and dim lighting created an atmosphere of forced intimacy, while the clink of expensive silverware provided a soundtrack for Maya's big night. Sarah! Mom's voice carried across the crowded dining room as she waved me toward their reserved table. We were worried you might not make it. I navigated between tables of celebrating families, my black cocktail dress appropriate for either an engagement party or a funeral. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Tonight would mark the death of any remaining illusions about my family's priorities. Wouldn't miss it, I said, accepting Mom's perfumed embrace while scanning the room for tactical advantages. The photographer I'd secretly hired was already positioned near the bar, camera ready to document whatever unfolded. Maya floated toward me in a cloud of silk and self-satisfaction, her engagement ring catching the candlelight like a beacon of her triumph. David followed in her wake, his smile too wide and his eyes carefully avoiding mine. I'm so glad you came, Maya gushed, squeezing my hands with fingers that trembled slightly from excitement or champagne. This means everything to me. Everything to her and nothing to me. The competition I was missing represented months of preparation, a chance to impress the state's top prosecutors and secure my future in criminal law. But her party, a celebration of a relationship built on the foundation of my discarded feelings, took precedence. I made the right choice, I assured her, the lie smooth as aged wine on my tongue. But I hadn't made any choice at all. 3 days ago, I'd submitted my competition entry remotely, a detailed presentation on prosecutorial ethics in white-collar crime cases that had taken me weeks to perfect. While my family celebrated Maya's engagement, my work was being judged by the very people who would soon be investigating our family business. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad's voice boomed across the restaurant as he stood, wine glass raised in a gesture of paternal pride. If I could have your attention for a moment. The dining room quieted, conversations fading as faces turned toward our table. Maya glowed in the spotlight of attention, her happiness so pure and uncomplicated that I almost felt guilty for what was coming. Almost. Tonight we celebrate two things, Dad continued, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. First, the engagement of our beloved Maya to David, a young man who clearly recognizes quality when he sees it. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. David straightened his tie, accepting congratulations from strangers while Maya beamed beside him. And second, Dad's voice grew warmer, we celebrate Maya joining our family law practice. She's brought such energy and innovation to the firm already. The praise felt like acid in my veins, each word a reminder of opportunities stolen and recognition misdirected. But I smiled and applauded with everyone else, playing my role in their grand performance. During the toast, my phone buzzed discreetly against my clutch. Text messages from the competition organizers, notifications I already knew were coming. I'd won first place in the mock trial competition, earning recognition from the district attorney's office and an invitation for a personal interview. The victory felt sweeter than the overpriced champagne we were drinking, a private triumph that belonged entirely to me. Speech! Speech! Someone called from across the room, and Maya stood gracefully, her silk dress rustling like autumn leaves. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, she began, her voice clear and confident. This past month has been incredible. Starting my new career, getting engaged to the love of my life, I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. The person she was meant to be, built on the foundation of my sacrificed opportunities and dismissed achievements. I especially want to thank my sister Sarah for always supporting me, even when it meant missing important things for herself. The words hit like a physical blow, their casual cruelty dressed up as gratitude. She knew about the competition. They all knew, and they'd chosen her party anyway. To Maya! Someone shouted, and the room erupted in applause. I raised my glass with everyone else, but instead of drinking to her happiness, I savored the knowledge of what was coming. The competition victory was already being announced on social media, my name trending among legal professionals, while Maya basked in the temporary glow of attention. As the evening progressed, guests began approaching me with congratulations that had nothing to do with the engagement party. Word of my competition win was spreading through the restaurant's Wi-Fi like wildfire, lawyers and judges checking their phones and finding my name at the top of every legal news feed. Congratulations on the mock trial victory, Judge Phillips said, appearing at my elbow with a knowing smile. Outstanding work on the white-collar crime presentation. Maya's face went pale as conversations shifted away from her engagement toward my professional achievement. The photographer I'd hired captured every moment of her growing distress, each flash of the camera documenting her realization that she was no longer the center of attention. You won a competition tonight? David asked, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with something that might have been respect or regret. Just a small legal thing, I said, echoing their dismissive language while inside I blazed with satisfaction. Nothing compared to this beautiful celebration. But the damage was done. Guests were pulling out phones, researching the competition, discovering that the small legal thing I'd won was actually the state's most prestigious prosecutorial award. Social media posts about the engagement party were being overshadowed by news of my victory. Maya tried to reclaim attention with increasingly shrill anecdotes about wedding plans and law firm innovations, but the spotlight had shifted irrevocably. She'd learned what it felt like to be upstaged by someone else's achievements, to watch recognition flow toward a sibling while she stood forgotten in the shadows. The irony was delicious. As the party wound down, David cornered me near the restaurant's narrow hallway, the flickering sconces casting dancing shadows on wallpaper that had seen better decades. I had no idea about the competition, he said, his voice low and urgent. If I'd known how important it was. It wasn't important, I interrupted smoothly. Maya's engagement is much more significant. He studied my face, searching for sarcasm or hidden meaning. But I'd perfected the art of appearing sincere while planning destruction, a skill that served me well in both law and revenge. I've been thinking, he continued, stepping closer until I could smell his cologne and the wine on his breath. About us, about what we could have been. The proposition hung between us like smoke, unspoken but unmistakable. He was already hedging his bets, testing whether my newfound success might make me a more attractive option than Maya's theatrical dreams. I think Maya is perfect for you, I said, my smile genuine for the first time all evening. You deserve each other. The insult was subtle enough that he couldn't be certain it was intentional, but sharp enough to draw blood. His face flushed slightly as he stepped back, understanding finally dawning. I walked away before he could respond, leaving him to contemplate the bridge he'd burned and the opportunities he'd squandered. The drive home was quieter than usual, Maya sulking in the passenger seat while Mom tried to salvage the evening with forced chatter about wedding venues and guest lists. In the rearview mirror, I watched the restaurant shrink into the distance, along with any remaining pretense of family unity. My phone buzzed continuously with congratulations from legal professionals, interview requests from news outlets, and invitations to networking events that would advance my career far beyond anything the family firm could offer. The second domino had fallen with the satisfying crack of a career launched and a family's assumptions shattered. But I was just getting started. The district attorney's office smelled of leather and ambition when I arrived for my interview, the scent sharp and clean compared to our family firm's stale air of desperation. Morning light streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like possibilities in the golden beams. This was supposed to be the morning of Maya's first major client meeting, where I would serve as her legal advisor, essentially doing her job while she took credit for my expertise. Instead, I sat across from DA Catherine Walsh, discussing my vision for criminal justice reform while Maya stumbled through legal complexities alone. Your work on corporate fraud cases is particularly impressive, DA Walsh said, her silver hair gleaming under the office lights as she reviewed my portfolio. The mock trial presentation showed real insight into white-collar crime prosecution. I'd sent Maya detailed notes for her client meeting before leaving for the interview. 17 pages of legal analysis, case precedents, and strategic recommendations that would have guaranteed success if she'd been capable of understanding them. She wasn't. I'm especially interested in cases involving family businesses that exploit nepotism and billing irregularities, I said, watching DA Walsh's eyebrows rise with interest. There's often a pattern of financial misconduct masked by emotional manipulation. Through the security cameras I'd learned to access during my previous life's lonely nights, I watched Maya's client meeting unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Without my physical presence to guide her, she couldn't answer basic legal questions about contract law or fiduciary responsibility. She'd promised the client services our firm wasn't licensed to provide. She'd quoted fees that violated State Bar Association guidelines. She'd made commitments about timelines that were legally impossible to meet. All while I sat in the DA's office, demonstrating the competence that should have made me the obvious choice to inherit the family practice. I'd like to offer you a position, DA Walsh said, leaning back in her leather chair with a smile that transformed her stern features. Specializing in white-collar crime prosecution. We need someone with your insight into financial fraud cases. The irony was perfect. My first case would likely involve investigating the very family business that had rejected me in favor of someone unqualified to understand a basic contract. I accept, I said, shaking her hand with fingers that trembled slightly from excitement and anticipation. By the time I returned to my apartment, Maya's disaster had exploded across multiple platforms. The client had filed a complaint with the Bar Association, posted negative reviews on every legal website, and threatened to sue for malpractice over promises Maya couldn't legally keep. My phone buzzed with panicked messages. Sarah, where are you? Everything's falling apart. The client is furious and I don't understand what I did wrong. Dad's talking about closing the firm entirely. I listened to each voicemail while drawing a bath, the warm water washing away years of accumulated disappointment as Maya's world crumbled with the efficiency of a controlled demolition. Zoe had quit that afternoon, her creative consultant position evaporating when she realized Maya couldn't actually pay her the salary they'd discussed. The job that existed nowhere in the legal profession had vanished like the illusion it had always been. The family group chat was a masterpiece of panic and blame shifting. Dad, how could you promise things we can't deliver? Maya, Sarah's notes were confusing. I did my best. Mom, maybe we should ask Sarah to help fix this. Maya, where is Sarah anyway? She was supposed to be here. I typed a single response. Congratulations on the new job, Maya. Learning experiences are so valuable. Then I turned off my phone and sank deeper into the bath, lavender scented water lapping at my chin while I planned my next move. The third domino had fallen with the devastating precision of competence meeting incompetence in an arena where mistakes had consequences. Maya had learned what it felt like to be responsible for something beyond her abilities, to face the judgment of people who expected actual expertise rather than charming smiles. Dad would understand that running a law firm required more than good intentions and family loyalty. Mom would see the difference between supporting dreams and enabling delusions. And I would begin my career as a prosecutor, starting with the white-collar crime unit where family businesses that confused nepotism with qualification fell under intense scrutiny. The water was cooling, but I remained in the tub, floating in the satisfaction of a plan executed with surgical precision. 3 strikes, 3 opportunities for them to reveal their priorities, 3 chances for karma to balance the scales, but the best was yet to come. The family intervention happened on a rain-soaked Tuesday evening in November, 3 months after my appointment to the DA's office and 2 weeks after Maya's final client complaint had triggered a formal investigation into the firm's practices. They'd discovered my new position through the local newspaper's announcement. A front-page story about the youngest prosecutor in state history specializing in white-collar crime. I arrived at the family home to find them assembled in the living room like mourners at a wake, their faces mixing desperation with dawning comprehension. The room felt smaller than I remembered, cramped with uncomfortable furniture and the weight of unspoken accusations. Mom's hands trembled as she poured tea that would go untouched, the china cups rattling against their saucers like castanets marking time until reckoning. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked ominously, each second bringing us closer to truths that couldn't be unsaid. "We need to talk," Dad began, his voice hoarse, from sleepless nights spent calculating legal fees and potential jail time. "About this situation with the firm." The situation, as if 3 years of systematic evidence gathering and careful manipulation were merely an unfortunate coincidence, rather than a masterpiece of strategic revenge. "Of course," I said, settling into the wingback chair that had been Dad's throne for decades. "What would you like to discuss?" But before they could launch into their prepared speeches of denial and deflection, I reached into my briefcase and withdrew the USB drive that had been my faithful companion for 3 years. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the charged atmosphere like a blade, "I think there are some things you need to see first." The drive clicked as I inserted it into Dad's laptop, the sound sharp and final in the hushed room. Bank statements cascaded across the screen in neat columns of evidence. Recorded conversations, photographed documents, 3 years of meticulous documentation displayed in devastating detail. "I died once because of your neglect," I said quietly, watching their faces pale as the magnitude of my knowledge became clear. "Cancer, alone in a hospital room while you attended Maya's community theater debut. I was 34, forgotten, having spent my entire adult life being your second choice." Mom's teacup shattered against the hardwood floor, porcelain fragments scattering like the remnants of our family's pretense. The supernatural element of my rebirth hung in the air like ozone before a storm, impossible to dismiss yet too incredible to fully accept. That's impossible," Maya whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd always been sensitive to things others missed, and something in my tone carried the weight of lived truth. "I retained every memory," I continued, clicking through financial records that showed 3 years of careful investigation. "Every slight, every dismissal, every moment you chose her over me. The night you missed my law school graduation for her pottery class exhibition. The morning you gave her my college fund for her gap year in Europe. The afternoon you promised her my partnership without consulting me." The grandfather clock chimed 8 times, each note echoing like a funeral bell as I revealed the scope of my systematic revenge. Screenshots of conversations, photographs of documents, audio recordings of their casual cruelty played in a devastating montage of evidence. But then came the revelation that shifted everything. The supernatural rebirth wasn't my only advantage. I said, opening a new folder on the laptop. The tech fortune I'd accumulated in my previous life didn't die with me. Cryptocurrency wallets appeared on screen, showing balances that made Dad gasp audibly. Offshore accounts with numbers that grew larger with each revelation. Investment portfolios worth more than our family firm's entire value history combined. $53 million, I said, watching the number sink into their consciousness like stones into still water. Built during the lonely nights of my first life when you were all too busy celebrating Maya's latest hobby to notice I was teaching myself coding and investing every spare dollar in emerging technologies. The silence stretched like taffy, sweet and suffocating. The money transfers I've been making, I continued, clicking through transaction records, weren't from my prosecutor's salary. I've been funding the investigation into your firm, hiring private investigators, ensuring every financial irregularity was properly documented for the State Bar Association. Dad fell to his knees in the middle of our living room, the same carpet where I'd played as a child while dreaming of someday making them proud. His weathered hands pressed against the floor, as if seeking stability in a world that had suddenly shifted beneath him. "We can fix this," he pleaded, his voice cracking like ice in spring thaw. "Give you the firm, support your career, anything you want. Just make the investigation go away." Maya joined him on the floor, mascara streaming down her cheeks in dark rivulets of regret. "I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed. "I thought you didn't mind, that you preferred the background work. I'll step aside, give everything back, whatever you need." The desperation was intoxicating. Years of dismissal and casual cruelty transformed into frantic appeals for mercy. But I felt only the cold satisfaction of a surgeon performing a necessary amputation. Zoe arrived within the hour, somehow having heard about the confrontation through the mysterious network that connected all desperate people in small towns. She burst through the front door without knocking, her usual composed facade cracked wide open. "Sarah, please!" she gasped, dropping to her knees beside Maya in a tableau of supplication. "I'll testify against them, provide evidence of their schemes, anything to make this right. I was just trying to fit in, to find my place." My phone had been ringing continuously for the past 20 minutes, David's number flashing on the screen with increasing desperation. Finally, he appeared at the door, engagement ring clutched in his sweaty palm like a talisman against judgment. "I made a mistake," he declared, pushing past Mom's half-hearted attempt to bar his entry. "I've always loved you, Sarah. Maya was just a distraction, a moment of confusion. We can fix this, start over, build something real together." The ring caught the lamplight as he held it toward me, the same diamond he'd offered Maya just weeks ago now, repurposed for a different, desperate gambit. I stood in the center of their chaos, rain pattering against the windows like applause from the storm outside. Each plea washed over me. Promises of partnerships, confessions of manipulation, offers of marriage and money and whatever they thought might purchase my forgiveness. "We'll do anything," Dad said, his voice breaking entirely. "Sell the firm, liquidate everything, give you complete control. Just please, don't let them destroy us." "I have connections," Zoe added frantically. "People who could make this investigation disappear if you just give me a chance to prove—" "The wedding's off," David interrupted, tossing the ring onto the coffee table where it landed with a hollow clink. "It was always supposed to be you, Sarah. Maya was just a placeholder until you realized your worth." Their words blended together into a symphony of desperation, voices rising and falling like tides of panic washing against the shore of my resolve. 3 years of careful planning had led to this moment. Their complete capitulation, their absolute understanding of what they had lost, and it felt empty. Not because the revenge wasn't sweet, it was perfect, surgical in its precision, and devastating in its completeness. But because I realized I no longer needed their recognition to validate my worth. "No," I said simply, the word cutting through their chorus of pleas like a scalpel through diseased tissue. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the rain against glass and the tick of the grandfather clock marking moments they could never reclaim. "I don't want apologies," I continued, my voice steady as bedrock. "I don't want partnerships or explanations or promises of reform. I don't want David's recycled proposal or Zoe's bargain basement loyalty or Maya's belated recognition of my abilities. I moved toward the door, each step feeling lighter than the last. I want justice, I said, pausing at the threshold to look back at the wreckage of our family gathering. And I want you to understand what you've lost. Not my legal expertise, or my financial resources, or my professional connections, though you've lost all those. The door handle was cold under my palm, solid and real in a way their promises had never been. You've lost the chance to know the person I became despite your neglect, not because of your support. You'll never know what we could have built together because you were too busy celebrating mediocrity to recognize genuine achievement. I opened the door, letting in the sound of rain and the scent of a world washed clean. The investigation will continue, I said over my shoulder. The consequences will unfold as they must. And I will build a life so far beyond your reach that even your regret won't be able to find me. The last sound I heard as I walked into the storm was Maya's broken sob and Dad's whispered, "Sarah, please." But please was a word that had come 3 years too late, and I was finally done listening. 6 months later, I stood on the courthouse steps after securing a conviction in the biggest white-collar crime case in state history. Not my family's firm, which had quietly settled and dissolved, but a multinational corporation that had defrauded pensioners of their retirement savings. The spring air carried the scent of cherry blossoms and possibility as reporters documented another victory for the youngest prosecutor in state history. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in our legal community. The girl whose family had deemed her unfit to inherit a small-town practice had become the prosecutor other attorneys whispered about in courtroom corridors, the one who made corporate criminals wake up in cold sweats. "Outstanding work, counselor," Judge Morrison said, her weathered face creased with pride as she descended the courthouse steps. She'd watched my entire journey, from the quiet law student who never spoke of family to the prosecutor who'd redefined what justice looked like in our jurisdiction. My penthouse apartment overlooked the harbor now, 18 floors above the petty concerns that had once consumed my world. I'd bought it with my legitimate salary rather than touching the hidden fortune that had funded my revenge. Some victories were sweeter when earned through honest work. The sunset painted the water gold as I reviewed case files for tomorrow's docket. Work that filled me with purpose instead of obligation. Each page represented someone who needed an advocate, a voice for the voiceless in a system that too often favored wealth over justice. The morning news had mentioned Maya's new life in Portland, where she'd found work as a restaurant server and was reportedly taking night classes in business administration. Dad had quietly joined a large practice as an associate attorney, his reputation forever tarnished, but his family finally fed. Mom had started volunteering at a women's shelter, perhaps finding meaning in helping others rebuild their lives. I felt neither satisfaction nor regret at their scattered fates. They'd made choices and faced consequences, just like everyone else who appeared in my courtroom. Zoe had moved to Denver, where her social media posts chronicled a humbler existence, working in marketing for a nonprofit. Her carefully curated image of success had given way to something more authentic. Volunteer work, hiking photos, genuine smiles instead of calculated poses. David's new marriage had lasted 8 months before his pattern of opportunism caught up with him again. His ex-wife's divorce proceedings were public record, filled with accusations of financial manipulation and emotional abuse that confirmed everything I'd suspected about his character. But I'd found something infinitely better than vindication in my new life. Genuine connections built on mutual respect rather than family obligation. D.A. Walsh had become like a mother to me, her stern exterior hiding a fierce protectiveness toward the young prosecutors in her office. She'd taught me that strength didn't require cruelty, that justice was most powerful when delivered with precision rather than anger. My colleagues at the prosecutor's office treated me as an equal, judging my work on its merits rather than my family connections. The camaraderie of shared purpose was intoxicating after years of competing for scraps of recognition. I'd even started dating someone, Marcus Chen, a public defender whose dedication to his clients matched my own passion for prosecution. Our relationship was built on intellectual equality and professional respect, a partnership where both voices mattered equally. On quiet evenings, I walked along the beach near my apartment, salt breeze clearing away any lingering shadows from my past lives. The waves erased my footprints just as I'd erased my need for their approval, each step forward taking me further from the desperate girl who'd died alone in a hospital bed. Sometimes letters arrived, birthday cards with no return address, newspaper clippings of my legal victories, awkward attempts at rebuilding bridges I'd permanently burned. I read them once, then fed them to my paper shredder, their pleas becoming confetti that disappeared into the recycling bin. My second life had taught me the sweet poison of revenge, the intoxicating power of systematic destruction delivered with surgical precision. But my third life, the one I was building now, had shown me something more valuable: the quiet satisfaction of living authentically, of building something meaningful rather than tearing down what others had built poorly. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars as I prepared for another day of serving justice, my heart finally free from the weight of their expectations and my future bright with possibilities they'd never be part of. I'd learned the greatest revenge wasn't destruction. It was thriving so completely without them that even their regret couldn't touch the life I'd built. The harbor stretched endlessly toward the horizon, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt truly free to explore whatever lay beyond it. The girl who'd begged for their love was gone. The woman who'd orchestrated their downfall had served her purpose. Now there was only Sarah, prosecutor, advocate, and architect of her own extraordinary life. And that was more than enough.